calling it into the chat, that would be great, so we know where everyone's from.
So welcome everybody. With Lily Zero, we have been holding this space for 4 years now, and we meet every month, and we have different topics related to supervision. Most participants are supervisors, but not everybody. Also, we welcome everybody who wants to attend, coaches in training, anybody who really is interested in the topic of supervision and the content we share. We also organize a conference every year. So we are very excited with Lily because we got the call for proposals. Some of you who are here have sent your abstracts. So we're putting together the conference. It seems it's going to be really great. And also we just finished a book that is in the printer now, and we're going to come out maybe at the end of the year. So we're very excited about having the first book on coaching supervision in the Americas. And even though it's in the Americas, our focus is in the Americas, we welcome people from all over the world. As Lily was saying, we have here 3 people from France, and people from all over the world. I'm seeing people also from India, from Uruguay, from Germany, from all over the world. So welcome. We want to really have a community where we can all learn from each other and grow together as supervisors and coaches. So today we're going to be covering the topic of compassion fatigue. And our goal with Lily when we were thinking about this topic was to make it very interactive. So we want to give you an opportunity to reflect on your work, to reflect on your challenges. And I'm going to share a little bit of the research that I have done on the topic. But before, we're going to start with a centering exercise. Okay, so we're going to invite everybody to do a 1 minute, very short centering exercise. People who work with me, you know that I don't do this on one-on-one, but I do this for every group that I teach, that I train, that I facilitate, that I do in group supervision. I'd like to bring everybody together. So centering and breathing is just one way to get everybody together. So with that in mind, I want to invite everybody just for a couple of minutes. If you want, you can turn off your camera to close your eyes. And I am going to invite you to focus on your breathing, centering. I want to invite you to focus your attention on your breathing, inhaling and exhaling without changing the path. And I'm going to invite you to do a body scan from the top of your head, imagining that you have a white light coming down your body. And as you scan your body, pay attention to sensations from the top of your head to your feet. So imagine that you have a white light that is coming down, and as the white light is coming down, pay attention to your body and how is your body today. You may want to move a little bit your neck or your shoulders. For people who are just joining us, we're doing a couple of minutes centering exercise to focus on your body. How is your body today? Keep going down. And pay attention if you feel any tension, any pain, any stress in different parts of your body. And as you acknowledge that, keep going down till you get to your feet. And when you get to the feet, come up. Do the same thing coming up from the feet to the head. And I want you to pay attention to your emotions. How are you arriving today? For most of us, it's in the morning, but for some of you in the evening, wherever you are in the world, how are you arriving here today? What emotions are you bringing with you? Are you feeling excited, enthusiastic? Are you tired? Are you starting your week and you feel energized, or you feel already tired? Maybe the weekend was not enough. Are you joyful? Are you sad? Are you angry? Are you worried? What emotions are you bringing with you? And what is in your mind that you may want to leave on the side? What is in your mind that you want to leave on the side to be able to be present in this hour that we're going to be working together? When you're ready, I want to invite you to focus on your breathing again and come back to our room, to our session. And I want to share briefly, how are we arriving here today? Why are we talking about compassion fatigue? And I'm going to invite you to do an exercise. So this is going to be very interactive. So briefly, what I want to share with you is that when I had to work on my dissertation for my PhD in organizational psychology, we're talking 95, many years ago. The topic that I chose for my dissertation was burnout. And the reason why I chose that topic was because I was working at that time in the AIDS community, working with clients and families living with HIV and AIDS. I worked for 2 years for AIDS Project Los Angeles, locally here in the city where I live in Los Angeles. And after working 2 years for them running support groups. So we're running support groups program. We have at that time 30 groups. And my job was to train and supervise the facilitators. And I ran a few groups myself. And at that time, we're talking 92, 93, everybody was dying. So we're running a support group, but by the end of the year, maybe most of the people that I was working were dying. And after that, I ran a program with families and children living with HIV and AIDS. I was a Latino family network here in Los Angeles, mainly with immigrants. And again, I would see the whole families with children, parents, everybody living with HIV and AIDS, and many of them dying. So I was burned out myself. So I thought, okay, if I do the dissertation, will help me to deal with emotional, how tired I was emotionally. I was pretty young too. I was 25 at that time. So it was pretty challenging. And I remember going to see the movie Philadelphia. Around that time, I don't know if you have seen that movie. If you not, I recommend it to you. And I remember that I was crying and I couldn't stand up from the movie theater because I was crying so much. Because I couldn't cry for the loss of my clients. But when I watch a movie, I could dissociate and I was able to experience what I was holding in my space, in my body. So I decided to do my research, and my hypothesis, and we're talking about 95, 96, nobody was talking about mindfulness at that time. Right now, everybody knows what mindfulness is. It's a practice. We should have done an exercise on mindfulness. But at that time, there was nothing like that. So my hypothesis at that time was, if the care providers, we're talking about social workers, doctors, nurses, everybody in the healthcare system, if they will use more effectively their spiritual practices, they may be more effective in dealing with all of the stress of the work. But makes sense now, isn't it? Like, we all know that mindfulness helps. Do we all agree that mindfulness really helps in the work that we do? And we started today with a mindfulness exercise. What we have done, just to do a centering, is a way of being present, is a way of being aware where we are. So whatever right now is very obvious, at that time it was not. So what was interesting, that my hypothesis was that if you have some spiritual resources, some tools, some beliefs, some practices, you may be able more effective in managing burnout. And I developed a self-spiritual survey for people to evaluate themselves. And I correlate with a Maslow burnout inventory. I don't know if anybody have heard about Maslow. They have done a lot of work on burnout. And do you know what? I couldn't show it. I couldn't demonstrate that. People who were very spiritual, who had practices, who practice rituals. We couldn't say mindfulness because at that time, we didn't exist that concept. What we covered was a meditation, basically, meditation or praying. And I couldn't find it because many people who have these resources still got burned out. Interesting, isn't it? So basically the point is that these practices may not be enough to not get burned out. So you may still have all of these practices and you may still get burned out. So this is, I don't know if I would do the research now, 25 years later, if the result will be different. We'll have more information now. But I was very interested in the topic and I presented on burnout all over the world. And then I got burned out of the topic. And I didn't want to know about burnout. I didn't want to talk about that. I didn't want to hear about it. I got tired of presenting and talking about it. But recently, with all of the tiredness that we're feeling related to working and dealing with COVID-19, interestingly, I start listening again about this idea of compassion fatigue. And I heard from a lot of people talking about compassion fatigue, and I start looking at and seeing what is the difference between burnout and compassion fatigue. So let me share with you for 5 minutes, a brief, short lecture, very brief, and then we are going to go to small groups to discuss. I would like to ask you for your experience. How have you been experiencing some of these symptoms, some of these experiences that I want to share with you? So I'm going to share the screen so I can share. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. So navigating current emotional challenges. And I think that there is a big relationship between our work and mental health. So I want to just say that I am framing that. So how we keep mental health for us as professionals, as supervisors, as coaches, and as well as working with our clients. So what is compassion fatigue? We had to find a definition. So I was trying to distinguish between compassion fatigue and burnout. So what I found out in the literature is that many people are looking at compassion fatigue as including burnout. So we have two key elements, would be burnout and secondary traumatization. So basically is the experience of healthcare providers feeling the same trauma that their clients. What is interesting and what I figured out is that burnout is more related to work and our experience to work. And the research that I have done, and I was very familiar working with teachers, policemen, basically as the group that first were, when the burnout concept was developed, it was studied mainly in them and their experiences, and healthcare providers, nurses. So now you will read in newsletters a lot about nurses getting burned out because of COVID. And it's not only what we have been talking about resilience, like this is another distinction, something else that we have been hearing in related to mental health and dealing with all of the stress, is how resilient we are in dealing and managing all of these challenges. What is interesting is that last year, at the beginning of the year, I was invited by my colleagues in China to do a presentation because it was just starting with COVID-19. And I put together a presentation on resilience for them. And then I didn't know that I will end doing this presentation for ICF in many chapters all over the world. And then I ended myself getting COVID-19 and living with COVID-19 and having the experience. And I think that all of that research helping me to deal with it. But resilience is also related to burnout and to what we're talking here, compassion fatigue. But the problem is when we get tired of being resilient. It's like resilience can be our first reaction. But after we continue being resilient, for how long we can be resilient and for how long we can keep moving and keep going and deal emotionally with all of the challenges that we're dealing. So the idea with compassion fatigue includes burnout. Burnout as being tired and feeling detached from our client and feeling distant and feeling that nothing that we're doing is enough. And adding to that is the idea that compassion fatigue is more pervasive, that it's not only about work, it becomes part of our whole life. We may experience that at home too, with family members. For example, in my case, my partner, because of COVID, lost his job. So he's back now to work, but still with everything that's happening now, with the new variant, with Delta, we don't know what will happen. So all of that is in the background. And I'm sure that everybody knows by now somebody who have died of COVID-19. So the idea is that compassion fatigue is triggered in different ways and for different people in different manners, but basically it affects all aspects of our lives. So we may find ourselves being more impatient, sometimes being more tired, sometimes feeling that we don't have energy. That happened to me one afternoon that I feel completely depleted of energy and I cancel my appointment. It's like, we don't want to cancel, like as coaches, as supervisors, I don't know you, but I feel the responsibility to be always ready and always never cancel if it is not an exception. And I remember one afternoon being so tired that I called all of my clients and I canceled all of my sessions as a way to be sure that I keep providing the best possible service. So it's also knowing our limitations and knowing when is the right time to put the boundary and to say, okay, I need to cancel. And also feeling guilty for that and understanding that at the same time, this is the best thing that I can do for my clients and for me too, for both. And feeling guilty and do it anyway. Some of the symptoms of compassion fatigue, it can be different for different people. Like in myself, I share with you, I was exhausted. Sometimes I have some memory problems. So I was wondering with Lily, when we talk and we work with Lily a lot in different programs, in different activities. And sometimes we don't remember things and we are not sure if that is age, if it is COVID-19, if it is being tired or what is it. But some of these show differently to different people. Some people get isolated, sometimes anger, irritability, lack of patience, lack of hope, can be managed and can be showing up in different people. But I would invite you to consider for you, what may be for you the way that shows up for you. Because there is not way out of this. We are all in one way or another impacted by what's happening in the world, how COVID is affecting our clients as supervisors. We're holding the space for coaches who are holding the space for their clients. And sometimes the clients are holding the space for other people. So that in itself, it's a really interesting phenomenon that many times I don't think we pay enough attention. The weight of holding the space for coaches who hold the space to their clients, who hold the space to other people. And some of people here are also supervisors of supervisors. So for some of us who are supervisors of supervisors, we are holding this even one more stage. So in the face of adversity, and this is something that I will use in working with resilience, we have a choice, we can be better, we can be better. So what we can do, what strategies we can do to deal with all of this. And I want, before going to small groups to discuss, to share your experiences, I want to bring up the distinction of compassion satisfaction. I don't know how many of you heard about that. I didn't hear much about that till I started doing my research. But the idea is that as there is compassion fatigue, there is compassion satisfaction. And compassion satisfaction is when you feel fulfillment for the work that we are doing, when you still feel hope, strength, and you feel resilient. It's acknowledging that we're making a difference and trying to look at the positive side. So the idea is that noticing, acknowledging, and appreciating our work. Basically, the key idea here is going to from a positive psychology perspective to a place of thinking positively, looking at the half full of the glass. Now, there is a test of self-compassion, compassion fatigue versus satisfaction fatigue, compassion. And I will give you the link. We don't have time now to go over that, but I do believe that going through the test can be of interest. So I'm going to give you the resource, and I want to invite you, after we finish the session today, to go and do the test and see what do you learn about yourself and how do you relate to compassion fatigue and compassion satisfaction. And that can be also a tool as a supervisor that you may use with coaches to help coaches to look at how they are managing the multiple challenges that we're facing today. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. I talk enough, and we are going to go to breakout rooms. And what I would like to invite you to consider in the breakout room is share with your colleagues, how do you relate to what you heard? How do you relate to the symptoms? How do you relate to your experiences? Where do you find yourself dealing related to compassion fatigue? And in the second part, we're going to go to another 10-minute discussion. We're going to talk about the strategies. So we're going to first identify the symptoms, identify how it's showing up for you. And then I'm going to talk about some strategies, and then we're going to go back to work on strategies. Okay? So for now, it's just on symptoms. How does that show up for you? What is your experience of dealing with compassion fatigue and everything going on in the world? So let's spend 10 minutes, and then with the same group for another 10 minutes later, we're going to talk about strategies. Okay, welcome back. So let's hear from a couple of people. Who would like to share? What was your conversation? What did you find? Anything in common? Who would like to start? Yeah, Lynn, go ahead.
It was beautiful spending time with my partners. And one of the things we talked about was just naming it was really helpful, to kind of normalizing it and realizing that we weren't alone in going through these kind of feelings in the past year. And I was just amazed by the capacity of the people I just spent time with. But I was thinking about it was like the boiling frog where the water gets increasingly hot, and before you know it, all of a sudden, it's over the top, and a person who's normally kind and compassionate can get irritable or distanced and so on. We all had our stories to tell over the last year. And then just the great help of taking a little bit of space away, creating that for yourself so you can be available again for the people you care for.
Thank you, Lynn, for sharing that. Like going to strategies, taking breaks and finding space to refresh. It's very important. I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes, but normalizing the experience, articulating the experience. Something that I have found myself, for example, feeling guilty because I was working compared to maybe some colleagues who were not working. And how do you manage that too? Who else would like to share?
I can go.
Yes, go.
Yes, in our group, we were 3 of us, and we share each of us the experience we have with different kind of symptoms. And that was very interesting that 2 of us explained that the solution was to get some sleep, real sleep, and to take some walk in nature to get resource. That's really easy to do, but it can help a lot. And then we shared about what we do, and we gave this example about to create a special space for ourselves. I was talking about create a bubble, and because sometimes it's not really easy to get away from that situation. Sometimes we can just leave, sometimes we can't. So it might be interesting to create a bubble, depending on people. I know I do it and it works. So this is it.
Thank you. And related to that, what we can and we cannot control, or we say we can or cannot leave. Sometimes you can leave, sometimes you can't.
No, you can't. Yeah.
And I have been discussing with some of my clients as a coach, basically, what are the things that we can control and what are the things that we cannot control, and have clarity on that. And this is an important piece of working with resilience, working with stress, working with burnout, is identifying what are the areas that we cannot control and maybe let go of that and focus on the areas that we can control. So, for example, generally, if you cannot leave, what do you do when you're staying? What can control at staying, as an example? So thank you for sharing that example. Who else would like to share? What do you discuss in your small groups?
I can try.
Okay, great. Inga, go ahead.
We focused on looking for similar symptoms. Yeah, we wanted to understand if we had some kind of experiences with similar symptoms, and there were a few similar ones. So first of all, we noticed that our body informed us about that. So like less immunity, tiredness, this all aches and pains. So that was like the first step. Then we noticed that emotions, it could be connected with that we became more emotional, then more irritable, or not present in the moment. And depending on what was the context, either body or emotion, we could think about different kind of strategies which can help us, yes, to deal with that. But I was surprised how many similarities we noticed, even though we are from different places, but the symptoms were on a similar level, yeah, either body our emotions. And as well, we noticed it was connected, we started talking about strategies a little bit, it was connected with cutting down on meaningless entertainment. But as well, this is a symptom. If you use too much of meaningless entertainment like Netflix or binge watching something or reading books which are not really developing you, or they just provide you some kind of, I don't know, get away from the moment, that might be as well the sign that you suffer from compassion fatigue.
Thank you for bringing this up, Inga, because I found myself watching more Netflix than common, and I was wondering, you know, what was going on, and that may be a way to entertain ourselves and to take our attention from other things. So thank you for bringing this up. So I think that this is a good summary in terms of symptoms that we may pay attention to, and the concept of self as instrument. This is a good opportunity to reinforce this idea. And when we're working with our clients, we're paying attention to what's happening to us physically, emotionally, and use that information. Like for people who are familiar with 7-9 model, we're talking about eyes number 5 and 6. And as supervisors, what is our experience in the here and now, and how our body and our mind is giving us information that we can use that can be helpful to create new insights for the coach working with us. But here, if we all pay attention, not only with our supervisees, but also in our lives, how whatever is happening and affecting us from the work we are doing and for what's happening around us is affecting us physically, looking at paying attention to our body and how our body is talking to us, paying attention to our emotions. Like when we started the session today, I was asking you what emotions you were bringing with you. People who work with me, I use this expression of what emotions we are having and what emotions are having us, as an idea of paying attention to how these emotions are showing up in our lives. So this is a great place to start looking at when we talk about compassion fatigue. And now changing gears and focusing on strategies. And I heard some of you already doing that. I want to share with you briefly a couple of ideas, and then we'll go back to small groups to wrap up the session. And the idea is that one way to look at the strategies is considering 3 areas: personal self-care, social self-care, and professional help. So personal self-care is what Genevieve, when you were talking about sleeping more, is like basics that many of us may or may not follow, talking about eating well, sleeping well, exercising, walking around, taking breaks. This is all about the personal self-care. So under all of these circumstances, we need to be paying even more attention than normal to how we take care of ourselves. The second one is social self-care. So for example, when you're working in small groups and share your experiences, that's one of the ways to talk to other people, normalize experience, share time with friends, with colleagues, discuss our emotions, discuss our experience, validate, normalize, articulate what's happening to us versus isolation. And the third one is related to professional help, is being sure that you work with a supervisor, that you, if you need to work with a therapist or a counselor, you look for that. Like when I was doing some research, the latest studies show that because of COVID-19, the levels of anxiety and depression grow tremendously, in particular in the United States, but probably this relates to the whole world. And things that were there before, like preconditions, COVID-19 exacerbates what may have been from before. So we're all dealing with a lot of anxiety and depression, and we can experience some of the symptoms ourselves or in our clients. So we want to pay attention to see when is the right time to also refer coaches working with us or clients as coaches to mental health services and looking for the appropriate professional help. So with these 3 areas of personal self-care, social self-care, and professional help, if I ask you, if you had to sense yourself, what strategies are you using? I think you already started talking about that, but let's go to small groups, and with the same groups, let's share for another, let's say 8 minutes. What have you been doing? And what ideas can you get from your colleagues? So welcome back. We have 5 minutes to wrap up the session today. So let's talk about some of the strategies so we can all learn from each other. We already have heard some of them. Anybody would like to share some strategies that we have not covered yet? So we talked about the basic ones, taking care of our body, eating well, sleeping well, exercising, walking in nature, talking to friends, talking to people, to normalize, validate. What else? Who would like to share other ideas? Yeah, go ahead, Barb.
Yeah, you know, so a lot of the strategies we all talked about were automatic writing, getting in nature. I cleared my calendar this week to be able to have freedom and go to the mountains, etc. Because I am, thanks to you, Damian, and this conversation, I recognize that I'm deep in compassion fatigue. But one of the things that as a health and wellness coach, I know is that sleep is the central pillar of health. And I was introduced to an app called Sleep Cycle that measures your sleep at night. And I started working with it 4 nights ago. And it's fascinating. I thought that I just laid down and went to sleep, and it shows that I snore. And I said to my husband, do I snore? I don't snore. It's picking up your snoring. And he said, no, Barb, you snore. So, you know, all kinds of revelations here, but I am really working. I think because sleep is something that even when I go back to work, the other thing I think is noticing the patterns that I have. The patterns of caregiving are just over the top, taking on what isn't mine. Even mentally and emotionally taking it on, even if I don't intervene in some way. That's the awareness has been huge. Thank you.
And thank you for sharing. Like I found there are 2 TED Talks about compassion fatigue. I will give you the resources if you're interested in going and watching these 2. And one of the 2 is a care provider who shared about the experience of taking care of her mother and how that for her also on top of her activities had been really tiring, and that she was not aware about how that was affecting her. But the idea that you share about sleeping, sometimes I envy Lily when she said, oh, I just came from my nap. And I said, oh, that's so good. So Lily, need to do more of that too. I think naps can be really good in the middle of the day, since we're working from home, taking like a 1 hour, 30 minutes, 20 minutes just can make a huge difference, just having a break like that.
There's a wonderful app, Damian, called Nap 26. It was developed on the basis of NASA, how NASA provided rest for their astronauts. It's a fabulous, cost $2.99 forever. And it's an app. It's wonderful. Nap 26.
Can you share that in the chat room so we
Sure.
can have okay, great. Nap 26.
Just one thing, Damian, in our group, I asked her to talk, but she didn't want it. Yasmin, she gave a very good example. Maybe she can say it very quickly, Jasmine.
Just picked on me. I was talking about decluttering and how I emptied my space, and how, as well as like clearing my mind over things I had control over, it also changed the energy of the room. And then we were also talking about how social exchange can be a change in our shift our energy. So if we speak to somebody we haven't spoken to in a long time, that will also impact how we're feeling at that time.
Having conversations with loved ones or people that we, as you're saying, may not talk for a while, sounds also good ways to take care of ourselves. Thank you for sharing that, Jasmine. We have time for one more person, and what I want to do, since you may have good idea, why don't you everybody write it down in the chat room so we can collect them? And if everybody who have been in trials can put down in the chat room what strategies you discussed, I can collect all of them and share with everyone in the next newsletter when we send invitations. And also, because we need to start wrapping up, we have in our website, I just downloaded yesterday the blog that I wrote on compassion fatigue with all of the resources. So if you go to our website, you will see Here is the link in the chat room. So if you go to that link, you can copy and paste. Go to our website. There is a blog that I wrote on compassion fatigue, and I put all of the resources, including the links to the self-test of compassion fatigue and some resources that I used for the presentation today. And I didn't include the PowerPoint, but I will do that too. So you want to have access to the PowerPoint, even though the main points are in the blog. So I put together my PowerPoint based on the blog. So the content is in the blog. You really don't need the PowerPoint. So this is a good resource with the things that we covered today and with some of the strategies. So what I want to ask everyone is if you want, listen to Vivaldi. That sounds so good. That sounds really great. We make an investment with my partner at home, and we got a jacuzzi and a sauna in the house. So now we have that. So that is really make a big difference in taking care and breathing and meditating and taking a break. So that's an example of good investments of how to take care of ourselves. Be alone. Somebody said yes, take whatever you need to take that break, to be alone with yourself. What sometimes can be challenging for some people, but finding the space to do that. Journaling, walking in nature, yoga, exercise. Thank you for people for sharing that. By the way, putting music change your state of mind and emotions just by changing the music. Dancing, putting music and dancing, that can make a big difference in the state of mind. So that can really, really work. Deep massage, Karen, that sounds good. Getting a massage and investing. Basically, sometimes we are not good about investing in ourselves. So we work very hard and then we don't invest in ourselves. So these are ways also to invest in ourselves. So I think we need to wrap up, unfortunately. So the last 2 minutes, thanks everybody for coming and participate and attending. And before we go, Lily have a couple of announcements we want to make before we finish today on time.
Yeah, thanks for leading us through that, Damian. It's given us lots to think about, I think. So September 27th, we've added a session for those interested in research. There's a lot of interest in research for supervision and coaching. Sarah Eustace from ICF Global, she's the Assistant Director of Academic Research, will come and talk to us how to set up our research, because Damian and I are looking at publishing a second book. So we want to get people up and ready for that. October 18th, Thea Bombeck, she's from Belgium. She's going to come and spend 90 minutes with us on how to use loyalty for self-reflection and supervision. November 22nd, Jean Elvire is here. She's going to do a session with Andrew Schaefer on complexity and uncertainty. And then we're thinking about the new year. So if you have anything you want to present, it's usually the third Monday of every month, between 60 and 90 minutes. So anyone wants to present, just drop Damian and myself an email. And of course, our conference is coming up. We're all really excited about the speakers. We should have something out in the next month on the different speakers. So we've got Robin Shohei, or some people say Shohet, coming, and we've got Ukukon Udo is going to do something, and Adriana and Elena from Mexico. So great list starting up. Hope to see you there. Thanks for coming, everybody.